And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is February the 9th, the 40th day of the year. 325 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a new one. And of course, it's the day after the Super Bowl. 29-13, Seattle Seahawks. And it was quite a interesting game. Not for the game on the field, but for the politics that were revolving around it. Bad Bunny's halftime show. A lot of folks complained that they couldn't understand a word he said. He was speaking in Spanish. And even his songs gave a political message. We don't go watching football to hear political messages. I don't know where he got the idea that we did. Well, holidays and observances, it's National Pizza Day. Imagine sinking your teeth into a hot, crispy, cheesy slice of heaven. Each bite's a flavor explosion. National Read in the Bathtub Day. Relax and rejuvenate while enjoying your favorite book in a soothing bath. National Develop Alternative Vices Day. National Football Hangover Day. You know, the Super Bowl party, of course, was legendary. The game was epic. But the hangover is certainly no joke. National Cut the Cord Day. Chocolate Day. Rich, velvety sweetness. Cocoa's the delectable cousin. Tempts with its luscious allure. Oatmeal Monday. National Poop Day. National Toothache Day. An uncomfortable feeling when a certain spot in your mouth just won't let you be peaceful and calm. National Clean Out Your Computer Day. Give your computer a breath of fresh air. Like opening a window in a stuffy room. Frevo Day. National Bagel and Lox Day. Rosa Parks Day. Which was actually that's interesting. The Rosa Parks Day was this is when Americans pause to remember the life and legacy of Rosa Parks. They reflect on her selfless work during American Civil Rights Movement. Well, of course, the morning is not complete without my computer deciding to go on strike. You know things are bad when it just sits and stares at you. There we go. Maybe. All right. Maybe. International Epilepsy Day. Children's Mental Health Week. Nurturing the minds of the youngest among us. National Cardiac Rehabilitation Week. Have Heart for Chained Dogs Week. Nothing worse than seeing an ignored dog chained up in somebody's yard. National Green Week. National Hero Week. International Week of Black Women in the Arts. Artes Mundi. Tinnitus Awareness Week. Tapati Festival. Venice Carnival. Student Volunteering Week. National Salute to Veteran Patients. I can get behind that one. Pickle Time Week. Love a Minch Week. Chastity Week. And National Marriage Week. The famous people born on this date: Michael Jordan, Mia Farrow, Joe Pesci, and William Henley Harrison. Don't hear his name bandied about much. Well, let's see what stories we have in the news. You know, Bad Bunny's halftime show has been ripped almost from the moment it ended for a language barrier and suspected political message. The and it ignited President Trump's fury and divided viewers. Super Bowl 60 halftime show featured Latin trap artist Bad Bunny, subject of immense criticism from Americans on Sunday night. President Trump called it one of the worst ever. Super Bowl halftime show is absolutely terrible. One of the worst ever. It makes no sense. It's an affront to the greatness of America and doesn't represent our standards of success and creativity or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy's saying. And the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching from throughout the U.S. and all over the world. This show was just a slap in the face to our country, which is setting new standards and records every single day. Prominent conservative influencers were among the show's hardest critics. Even Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon, chimed in. One of the biggest criticisms was the fact the show was entirely in Spanish. This was an American game done in Spanish. If you can see the sense, maybe you can explain it to me. Well, Nancy Guthrie, there's still news going on about her. Final deadline looms in the kidnapping of Savannah Guthrie's mother. The missing 84-year-old mother of NBC Today host, or co-host, Savannah Guthrie, entered its 9th day this morning. No suspects or person of interest have been identified. And the final alleged ransom deadline connected to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie is reportedly set for 5 p.m. local time today. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for information on her disappearance and they're vetting ransom notes. Apparently, a lot of folks jumped into the fray with their own ransom notes. Former hostage negotiator Dan O'Shea said Sunday that the deadline approaching for a $6 million ransom in the case of Nancy Guthrie's abduction doesn't mean it's the end of the story by a long shot. Says he thinks it'd be just the next chapter. Made the comment during an appearance on Fox News Sunday night in America ahead of the ransom demand of 5 p.m. on Monday. Don't even have a person of interest at this point, what makes it even harder. It's a complete and total mystery. Well, Turning Point USA's patriotic Super Bowl alternative earns praise as millions tune in rather than watching Bad Bunny. It's called the All-American Super Bowl Halftime Show. The show featuring Kid Rock and Brantley Gilbert and Lee Brice and Gabby Barrett streamed on YouTube at the same time as the Super Bowl halftime show with Bad Bunny took place. Many praised the alternative show with millions tuning in. Numbers soaring as high as 5 million viewers tuning into the live stream on YouTube. But some folks can't be pleased. They called it underwhelming. Others criticized Kid Rock's vocal ability. Turning Point USA's All-American Halftime Show also took a moment to pay tribute to founder Charlie Kirk. That tribute took place as Kid Rock finished up a song and read in remembrance of Charlie Kirk, alongside photos of Kirk's wife Erica and their children. Casey Musgraves slammed Kid Rock as she took to X to share her thoughts. Country singer wrote about Bad Bunny's halftime show. Said, well, that made me feel more proudly American than anything Kid Rock has ever done. But Jake Paul took to X 2 hours prior to the halftime show to slam Bad Bunny. Paul, who lives in Puerto Rico, denounced the Puerto Rican singer's halftime show and told fans they have the power to use their voices. Purposely turning off the halftime show, let's rally together and show big corporations they can't just do whatever they want without consequences, which equals viewerships for them. And he said, you're their benefit. Realize you have the power. Turn off this halftime show. A lot of folks did, apparently. Well, Patriots' Mac Hollins makes a striking Super Bowl entrance, barefoot with a mask and cuffs. New England Patriots wide receiver Mac Hollins made it clear he tries to avoid wearing shoes when he's away from the football field. So it was no surprise when he arrived barefoot at Santa Clara, California, a few hours before Super Bowl 60 kicked off. What he was actually wearing may have been more of a surprise. 32-year-old walked toward the Patriots locker room wearing a face mask that appeared to be a nod to Hannibal Lecter, along with handcuffs around his wrist. His feet were shackled, and the red jumpsuit had the words Range 13 on the back. Hollins, who won a Super Bowl during his rookie season with the Philadelphia Eagles, had Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel's high school jersey in his hand as he walked through the Levi Stadium tunnel. Vrabel's aiming to be the first person to win a Super Bowl title as player and later as head coach for the same franchise. Hollins went through some early warm-ups on the stadium turf on Sunday while wearing the number 84 Warriors jersey and, of course, without wearing his cleats. Well, what you might look at as eccentric, some folks would call just absolutely nutso. Patriots' Kyle Williams helped nab a Super Bowl 60 field invader during the game. New England Patriots wide receiver Kyle Williams helped corral the man who ran onto the field during a brief pause at Super Bowl 60. Ball is dead as NFL officials tried to break up an incident between Patriots star Stephon Diggs and Seattle Seahawks defensive back Josh Jobe. Two players are going at it and had to be pulled apart by NFL officials and their teammates in hopes of avoiding a penalty. The man that ran onto the field probably wished the security guards had their attention elsewhere. He carved up the middle of the field. The Seahawks players watched the man blow past him. Williams ran down and helped security guards corner him. Man was missing a shirt, but Williams' help was enough to aid the guards and take the man off the field. Williams has been a solid rookie for the Patriots this year. Had 10 catches for 209 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2025. Also returned 11 kicks for 290 yards on special teams. Patriots were down 19-0 at that point, were in need of a big play to have a glimmer of hope and pulling out a massive comeback victory. Well, what happened? Patriots, as I said, were down 19-0 at this point. They eventually got 13 points on the scoreboard. Not enough to win, but at least they weren't frozen out. Well, Usa Vance's pregnancy news tells us about men and women in America. Second Lady Usa Vance's announcement of baby number 4 was delightful and refreshing news. Having 4 children in the U.S. is not the norm these days. Across the U.S., women are having fewer children or none at all. A woman's decision to have children is often seen as a personal lifestyle choice. This decision also affects the nation. Without enough births to maintain its population, the country struggles to sustain its economy, communities, and culture. And, worldwide, birth rates seem to be down. Well, a lot of folks have weighed in on why Bad Bunny's polarizing Super Bowl halftime show felt like a slap in America. It's officially behind us, finally, mercifully. What began as with hype and outrage, and then more outrage ended with a show most charitably described as polarizing, confusing for those who are not already Bad Bunny fans. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell promised that Bad Bunny would use the show to unite the world in a really creative and fun way. Turns out he was right. Most of the country, with the exception of some Democrats like California Governor Gavin Newsom, was united in its revulsion over a show that narrowly tailored to a niche audience, despite being billed as inclusive and respectful of America. The pre-show hype around Bad Bunny's invitation to perform at this year's Super Bowl began with his Saturday Night Live demand that viewers learn Spanish in order to watch his show. He walked a dig back at pre-Super Bowl press conference, but the settlement ended up being true. Then, of course, there was the online rumor that Bad Bunny wore a dress during his halftime performance and honor Hispanic LGBTQ figures. That turned out to be a hoax. You got to hand it to him and his marketing team. In the weeks leading up to Super Bowl, they made sure to captivate people's attention, whether it was positive or not. Super Bowl halftime show was a condensed version of the show he put on during his Puerto Rico residency. As America watched, Bad Bunny began with a walk through a sugarcane field. He passed by several scenes typical of Puerto Rico as he opened with Auntie Asked Me, such as a coconut water stand and a domino table. Well, I have to say, I didn't watch it. Well, Nick Jonas questioned faith after the church forced his family out of the home during his early fame. Nick Jonas opened up about how his faith was tested after being betrayed by his longtime church and losing his family home during his early rise to fame. When Nick, who was 33, and his brothers Kevin, 38, and Joe, 36, first began pursuing music careers in the early 2000s, their father, Kevin Jonas Sr., was a senior pastor at the Wyckoff Assembly of God Church in Wyckoff, New Jersey. Shortly after they formed the boy band, the Jonas Brothers, and signed Columbia Records in 2005, Kevin Sr. was effectively forced to resign from his pastoral role, and the family had to move out of their church-owned home. In a recent appearance on the Jay Shetty podcast, Nick reflected on the circumstances behind his family's departure from their church and how it marked a turning point in his faith and personal life. He said, "Our dad was at that church for 10 years, a real safety net for us, and a place where we felt part of the community." Well, unfortunately, churches are not always what they are cracked up to be. I grew up in a little country church that actually wound up revolving around two members who thought they were God's gift to the world, and they told people that. Well, poison pill and digital secrets are flipping the Sunshine State's condo power dynamic. Florida real estate experts break down the latest legal changes in the post-Surfside condo market. For decades, buying a Florida condo was a leap of faith masked by palm trees and ocean views. But in the new year, that veil of secrecy is lifted. Between a new mandatory digital transparency law and a landmark court ruling that handed a so-called poison pill to developers, the power dynamic in the Sunshine State has shifted dramatically. Douglas Elman, Palm Beach agent Jessica Julian told Fox News that I think it's definitely correcting. I'd say last year we saw some more of this. These older buildings were hurting. Not as many buyers came for them. Everybody was kind of scared to dip their toes into an older building after what's happened in Miami or Surfside. And so now that assessments are being paid and repairs are being done, we're definitely seeing that correction. And the correction that's happening across the country, with a lot of major companies moving out of California, you're seeing more and more of the power in this country going to Florida. Well, Hakeem Jeffries pressed on Democratic opposition to voter ID. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York, was pressed on CNN on Sunday as to why he considered voter ID legislation to be voter suppression, despite Democratic victories in states that enforce ID laws. State of the Union host Dana Bash asked Jeffries about the Democratic Party's opposition to the Safeguarding American Voter Eligibility Act, which would require people to present photo identification before voting, despite mass support from members of both parties for voter ID laws. He insists that even states like New York already have voter identification requirements and claimed the SAVED Act was an attempt by the Republican Party to rig elections. Well, unfortunately, a lot of the Democrats feel if you get here, you have the right to vote. Who knows who's voting? Well, Representative Crockett driving an 80,000-pound truck is not the same as driving a rental car. Well, several people who spent decades training professional truck drivers make it clear they take highway safety very seriously. America's economy depends on a national freight network that moves goods through every state, across every major highway corridor, and into every community. Were recent remarks made by Democratic Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett during a House Judiciary Committee hearing suggest that English language proficiency is not necessary to safely operate a commercial motor vehicle. She equated it to the same practice as somebody driving a rental car in a foreign country when they might not speak the language. Well, a lot of folks feel her assertions were misguided, dangerous, and dismissive of the professionalism of America's truck drivers. And there have been some major accidents involving non English speaking or English reading truck drivers. Unfortunately, when you get elected, you become an expert in everything. And you make it clear to everybody you are that expert. Well, Charlie Puth, Puth, draws mostly praise for a Super Bowl 60 national anthem performance. He helped kick off Super Bowl 60 at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California with his rendition of the national anthem. And football fans flocked to social media to give him his flowers for it. Some national anthem renditions have been critiqued in the past. A lot believe he did well with the performance. One ex-user said he killed it. Well, another added, Charlie Puth singing the national anthem like he's in the Baptist church mixed with a little 80s R&B in there. One of my favorite anthems I heard. Even some viewers who are not fans of the Rumsum, New Jersey natives' music came away impressed. While I'm not a huge fan of his musical stylings, Charlie Puth is a brilliant musician, one ex-user posted. There were some who believed too much auto-tune was pumped into his microphone. With auto-tune, even I could sing. Well, secret medieval tunnel's been found beneath an ancient pagan grave, according to archaeologists. Archaeologists in Germany recently revealed a secret tunnel from the Middle Ages, a tunnel hidden within a much older burial site. These findings were revealed in a January 29th press release by the State Office for Heritage Management and Archaeology in Saxony-Anhalt. The tunnel was found in the Middle Neolithic burial complex in Rheinstadt, Germany. Officials estimate the burial complex is used by members of the Bauberg culture in the 4th millennium BC. Excavators found it late last year ahead of a wind turbine construction project. Some 5,000 years later, Erdstart, an underground tunnel system, was built into the Delos, or compact wind-deposited silt at the site. There's a lot of secrets being found these days, no question about that. And finally, New York City Mayor Mondami's expanded sanctuary laws and defends an alleged cop stalker. Unfortunately, we've got, he doesn't quite seem to get it. And now these stories have come to light that he's apparently and somehow related to Epstein, is not helping his administration. Well, Bassman warns of a gigantic loss if the Supreme Court strips Trump's emergency tariff powers. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned that a Supreme Court ruling against President Trump's use of emergency tariff powers would be a gigantic loss for Americans, citing the policy's role in pressuring China and other countries to negotiate. And certainly will, with the left taking a position anything Trump wants is evil, it comes down to the Supreme Court. Well, let's get to our topic for today. We're still talking about conspiracy theories. And boy, there's a lot of them. One of them involves the Denver airport. If you don't know anything about it, it's a unique building. In fact, there's only one airport larger than that in the world. And no matter what you say, there is something very strange about the Denver International Airport. And it's been a rather strange affair since the very beginning. First opened on February 28, 1995, and it's gained quite a reputation since that time. First thing about the airport that sets it apart from the rest, of course, is its massive size. It's huge. Biggest airport in the United States. In fact, it's the second biggest in the world. There's only a slightly larger airport in Saudi Arabia. So why would Denver, Colorado, of all places, need such a big airport? Many residents wondered this aloud at the unveiling, but not only that, they also wondered why Denver needed another airport at all. See, Denver's got a perfectly functional, and at least by the current standard, completely modern airport at the same time the Denver airport was built, serving the citizens of Colorado and their visitors from the rest of the world quite well. So it came as a mystery why this massive airport was being constructed just outside of Denver in the first place. And even more strange than that is the mystery of who just was paying for the operation. The whole price tag of this construction job was said to have been in the billions, about $15 billion to be exact. But the airport's construction was privately funded. This was not a government paid for, a taxpayer paid for airport. And the person or persons responsible for it are completely unknown, even to this day. Were these just generous, rich benefactors who wanted to do something nice for the community? Well, the more gullible folks among us might believe that, but this was not just an instance of altruism and philanthropy on the part of the wealthy. According to conspiracy theorists, there's a whole lot more to the story. Certainly doesn't help matters are incredibly bizarre murals, markings, and statues littered all over the campus of the airport. One of the most striking of these, which is quite visible when you first touch down at the airport, is a pale blue horse that greets all arrivals. Now, I flew through the Denver airport once, and I have to say, even the atmosphere is unique. The horse is pale blue in color, stands 30 feet tall, and has piercing red eyes that glow at night. Stands on its hind legs as if it's about to charge. Incredibly ominous and frightening, to say the least. Someone even goes so far as to say it reminds them of the biblical pale horse of death, said to usher in the apocalypse. It's remained a mystery why such universally unsettling imagery would be chosen as the first thing to display to passengers arriving at the airport. And this spooky horse of death has remained right where it is. And it's also a fact this pale blue horse has ushered in the death of at least one person, the very man who built it. And a shockingly sad irony, Luis Jimenez, the sculptor who brought the horse to life, had his own life taken when the horse slipped off its foundation during routine renovation. It slammed into the artist below, crushing him to the ground. So massive it left a crater in the pavement surrounding his crushed body. Just a man had been hit by a massive meteor. It's because of events like this that even the more conservative among the superstitious began to whisper conspiracy. Sports have pointed out, though, that despite the tragic accident that killed its creator, the horse at the Denver airport is nothing more than a uniquely stylized Bronco, similar to the official symbol of Colorado's football team, the Denver Broncos. Even if it's not the pale horse of the apocalypse, if you're looking for a graphic depiction of the end times, you don't have to go any further than the murals all over the common areas of the airport. Painted by a Mexican-American artist named Leo Tanguma, the murals viciously or variously depict scenes of death and carnage, including an image of a gas-masked soldier towering over civilians as they perish at his feet in what seems to be a biological attack of some sort. Soldier has a gun in one hand and a giant sword in the other. Seems to be stabbing a dove, as if the soldier, representing war and pestilence, is forever murdering the universal symbol of peace and harmony. The dove, don't you know? The artist who painted the murals claims this is just a misrepresentation of his work. People are only seeing one side of it. Leo Tanguma is quick to point out that another mural, which is supposed to be the positive triumph over the other dark, negative images, you can see children literally beating weapons of war into plowshares of peace. He's referring to the mural entitled Children of the World Dream of Peace, and with several children of various nationalities depicted handing over their weapons to a child who appears to be of a Scandinavian origin as he strikes the instruments of death and destruction with two huge hammers, rendering them useless. But still, as even the artist admits, getting off your plane after a long flight has to be a bit strange to see such intense and heavy imagery sprawled across an airport. He also contends he wasn't given much in the way of guidelines on the project. It was just given the basic theme of world unity, and he got to work. For him, the murals are just some of his art, nothing more. But of course, those with a bent toward conspiracy see a whole lot more. So what is it that these conspiracy buffs are seeing that the rest of us might not? Well, for one thing, there's a strong belief that this airport serves a dual purpose. It isn't only an airport. For some, it's also a top-secret underground bunker. And who or what is this bunker supposed to house? I mean, according to these theorists, the massive installation said to lurk underneath the airport is part of a massive top secret network known in security circles as the COG. The acronym COG stands for the Council of Governments, which has been in existence since 1970s. Serves the purpose of providing a support network during an emergency. And during the Cold War is why they believed that this COG system would come to life in the event of a nuclear war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. The idea is that even if the mainland U.S. was completely devastated by nuclear weapons or some other disaster, there'd still be a continuity of government thanks to the underground COG network spread across the country. And this group is supposed to be underground both symbolically and literally, since there are said to be several secret government bunkers installations spread all throughout the United States. It's believed that this is why the super installation under the Denver airport is located where it is. This position is in the middle of Colorado, provides a centralized location, so all pieces of the COG puzzle can easily send reinforcements and supplies to the main central location underneath the Denver airport. It said the airport has miles and miles of depths to it. There are train stations and several terminals buried under what the general public sees or has access to. And some of this conspiracy has supposedly been validated by anonymous contractors. Construction crews have come forward to claim they were taking down elevator shafts that led them several miles under the airport to order to do routine maintenance on the part of the facility the rest of the world doesn't see. The U.S. government's relying on an underground subterranean network to protect important officials and military commanders in the wake of a nuclear war. This would actually not be unprecedented or even all that unusual. Following the end of the Cold War, several such installations have already been revealed, so it only makes sense that an even more massive upgraded installations might exist today. And as has been noted, the centralized location of the state of Colorado makes it ideal for this purpose. While the underground bunker at Denver is the heart of from which artery-like tunnels stretch out in every other region in the country. According to this theory, even if an ICBM, asteroid, or whatever you might suspect is 25 minutes from impact, the elite 1% on the coast can hop onto a high-speed supersonic train in New York or California and hurtle at mind-blowing speeds to the safety of the Denver bunker. All in less than 20 minutes, don't you know? You may think it sounds crazy, but not to Elon Musk. The tech guru and CEO of SpaceX recently claimed he's been commissioned by none other than the U.S. government to build what has been termed a hyperloop. First stage in Musk's design will create a hyper-speed rail linking New York to D.C. This is only the beginning. Plans are in the works to stretch this network all across the country. A lot of folks believe that the underground bunker beneath the Denver airport will be the main hub to which all these underground vacuum-sealed tunnels will connect. Once this infrastructure is in place during an emergency, designated survivors will be able to hop onto magnetically levitating pods that can travel at more than 800 miles an hour toward the underground bunker at the Denver airport. I remember when I was doing adventure radio in Anaheim, California, years ago. A lot of folks came forward and gave me stories about underground high-speed rails that they had been on or had found. I didn't go exploring for that myself, but everybody can't be wrong. For some folks, around every secret bunker in the name of national security, and even enough to sate their appetite for conspiracy. These folks truly believe the underground installations have nothing at all to do with security. At least not their security. For them, there's a truly nefarious purpose behind these underground structures, reminiscent of the worst episode ever to befall mankind, the Holocaust. According to these theories, this underground facility is not a fortress to protect a select few, but rather an extermination chamber for the rest of us. We'll be herded in, pinned like animals, and eventually led to the slaughter. Theory goes that there's a plan by the elite to forcibly lower the human population. As soon as the world government takes hold, everybody deemed not to be among the lucky elite will be sent to the underground concentration camps under the airport to meet their unfortunate end. These theories point to something called the Georgia Guidestone, which is not in Colorado at all, but for them holds an eerie similarity in sentiment to all the same. This mysterious structure, situated just outside of Atlanta, was built by a completely anonymous but fabulously wealthy donor, just like the airport has been. On the surface of these stones is written what appears to be commandments as to how a utopian society can be built from the ashes of a global Armageddon, such as that depicted by the Denver airport murals. Most startling these instructions is the declaration that the planet's population should never be more than 500 million. Considering the fact that the Earth currently holds about 7 billion people, which is expected to rise to as much as 9 billion in the coming years, this proposed drop in population is startling to say the least. So is the Georgia Guidestones advocating the same thing as the Denver airport seems to be advocating? The unthinkable concept of population control through genocide on a scale that the world has never seen? Well, that's what makes conspiracy true believers really believe, hopefully. Both the Georgia Guidestone and the odd happenings at Denver airport are just the result of a wealthy art enthusiast and the artist having a penchant for the abstract and the bizarre. Surely all of these outlandish conspiracy theories of domination by the elite and the subjugation of the masses are the work of an overactive imagination. Well, as creepy as the Denver airport actually is, if you've never been there, I suggest you go. Yes, I'll hope this is just the case. Well, another conspiracy theory that ranks very high among a lot of the folks who favor conspiracy is Montauk. In fact, the Montauk Project ranks pretty high in the annals of conspiracy theory. This backdrop of this shadowy story is the easternmost point of the Long Island Peninsula. The strategic location was long used by military outfits as an outpost and staging ground. But it's at another staging ground in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where the story of the Montauk Project actually begins. Supposedly, in 1943, during the height of World War II, that scientists were feverishly working around the clock to create super weapons to win the war before Hitler's alleged wonder weapons gave the victory to the Nazis. At that time, one of those feats of engineering was being performed upon the USS Eldridge, which was parked in the Philadelphia Navy Yard. And at the same time, they had designs on the Eldridge. They also had designs on the Eldridge's crew. In a top-secret project called Rainbow, engineers involved were attempting to envelop the entire ship in a powerful electromagnetic field. They were trying to render it completely invisible to radar. Far before scientists would perfect the stealth technology we have today, but even the 1940s era science, they allegedly came up with some rather startling results. Supposedly, once they successfully enveloped the ship in the field of electromagnetic energy, it only disappeared from radar, it completely disappeared from their vision as well. Right before everybody's eyes, the ship simply vanished from the water. This was apparently a result that none of the scientists had predicted. Initially completely dumbfounded as to what had happened to the Eldridge and its crew, some people believed the ship had been accidentally incinerated by the high voltage. Word engineers soon received another surprise when it was revealed the ship had spontaneously reemerged in the waters off of Norfolk, Virginia. The men behind the project were intrigued to find that they had stumbled upon something altogether unknown to science, a mean to actually bend time and space. But since this field seemed to produce disaster results for any human being placed inside it, the crew of the Eldridge all had irreversible psychological damage. Further testing on this particular aspect of the project was discontinued. The funding for the Philadelphia experiment was then diverted toward the Manhattan Project. And those efforts would, of course, pay off with a weapon that did indeed prove capable of winning the war, the atomic bomb. Philadelphia experiment would be secretly picked up where the had been left off, though, starting in the late 40s, with new experiments were conducted in military research facilities at Montauk, New York. It's since been alleged that all manner of bizarre experiments in time and interdimensional travel have been conducted at Montauk. One man who claims to have had an inside view of these happenings is a former electrical engineer named Preston Nichols. His own career had already taken a decidedly odd turn in the early 70s after he landed a research position that focused on the interaction of electromagnetic fields with those who possessed telepathic abilities. Supposedly, while he was in the midst of his clandestine research in the field of telepathy, he noticed considerable interference coming from nearby Montauk Point. Traced it to a large radar antenna on the base, but was stonewalled when he asked about it. When the base was officially abandoned in 1984, he decided it was time to satisfy his long-standing curiosity. Went over to investigate personally, was amazed to see a facility that seemed to have been abandoned overnight. Everything was in a chaotic state. Paperwork and equipment haphazardly strewn around every section of the base. He instinctively knew that something wasn't right. In blatant defiance of the military precision with which a base would normally have been closed, this base been left in complete disarray, as if the objective had been to simply jump ship as soon as possible. What caught this electrical engineer's attention more than anything else in the disordered chaos was a massive number of powerful electronic generators had been left behind. If the government wasn't using it, Nichols wanted to collect some of this equipment for his own studies in electromagnetism. Wanted to know what he could salvage. He turned to the military surplus disposal agency that usually coordinated this sort of thing. According to Nichols, he eventually got permission to go to the base and sift through whatever he could find. And for a lot of folks, as part of the story, the idea that somebody could be allowed to just browse around an abandoned base seems highly suspect, but it gets even stranger, folks, because stranger things are coming. Supposedly, as Nichols was gathering equipment and records, he stumbled upon the encampment of a homeless man who was squatting at the base. This man claimed that the scientists had been conducting an experiment that had opened up a doorway, and after that, a monster came through and attacked the research team. The homeless man then proceeded to do a double take. Apparently, he recognized Nichols and recoiled in fear. Even though Nichols had no recollection of ever meeting the man, the hobo began to claim he not only knew him, he had seen Nichols operating the equipment on the night that the Montauk monster had emerged. This man claimed he was there as part of a group of test subjects who had been picked for research study. Well, Nichols, of course, was disturbed by this strange tale. Figured the man's ramblings were likely nothing more than the product of a warring combination of alcohol and mental illness in his deranged mind. But as he began to talk to others in the area, including the patrons of a nearby beach resort off the pier, he was inundated with all kinds of strange stories about the research that had been conducted at Montauk. Eventually introduced a man named Duncan Cameron, who had some disjointed memories of working at the Montauk facility. For some reason, though, Cameron seemed to be suffering from a form of amnesia. Though he could remember working at the facility, he could not for the life of him remember what he did or what actually went on at Montauk, as if his memory had been completely blocked. Nichols wasn't sure what to make of these things, but he wanted to get some information, more information from the rambling drunken bum than he could provide. So he hired his own team of physics to unlock the... and a few psychics as well, folks. Unlock the memories seemed to be buried deep in Cameron's subconscious mind. And what he found was nothing short of incredible. Cameron's lost memories provided a direct link back to the Philadelphia experiment. According to Cameron, he himself was actually on board the Eldridge when it was made invisible and teleported 300 miles away from Philadelphia to a port in Virginia. And as bizarre as it certainly seems, with his newfound memories intact, Cameron also recognized Nichols and tipped it off to the fact that he was part of the Montauk project as well. He must have had his memories wiped as well. These stories of brain wipes are similar to the well-documented MK-Ultra experiments that we've talked about earlier. What Nichols discovered in his own recovered memories was way beyond anything owned up to by the CIA's MK-Ultra. Nichols was eventually able to remember experiments involving the mysterious Montauk chair, an alleged piece of alien technology either reverse engineered or given to humanity, able to enhance human psychic ability. When hooked up to the chair, the user had the ability to manifest his thoughts into physical reality. Cameron himself was said to have been an expert with this kind of soul technology. When he was strapped in the chair, he could be instructed to think about any given material or object in the universe, and it would spontaneously appear out of thin air somewhere on the base. This godlike ability gave the user the power to create things from the words of their mind. If they thought it, it'd come into being. Most of these objects were fleeting and temporary, though. They only lasted as long as the user held his concentration. And as soon as he was distracted or the transmitter on the chair was switched off, these thought-formed objects would swiftly fade out of existence. As ridiculous as it might sound, if the signal was given to imagine a slice of pepperoni pizza, for example, while the user was strapped in the Montauk chair and utilizing his brain wave amplification, a fresh slap of piping hot pepperoni pizza would actually appear. The person sitting in the Montauk chair supposedly became a creator in every sense of the word. If such things are truly possible, it seems to give new import to the old philosophical concept we're all figments of somebody else's imagination. It's as if God dreamed us all up while slumbering, and we'd ever wake up, we'd all disappear. Well, the things dreamed up in Montauk, though, quickly became a bit more perplexing than a slice of pepperoni pizza. One of the stranger paradoxes that supposedly emerged was time travel. Cameron, in particular, said to have been trained in the art of time tunneling, through the decades. Initiated his escapades through time by creating a tunnel from 1980 to 1990. Supposedly, once this portal was created, you could step right through it and into the future. Doorway supposedly stayed open as long as the person in the chair maintained his focus on the connection between these time periods. This was apparently extremely difficult. It was an immense struggle for the user to keep the time portal open. Such instability made it too risky to travel through the portal, since anybody who entered them ran the risk of the opening abruptly collapsing if the user lost his train of thought. With the rest of 1980 and 81, though, the team worked to refine the technique until users such as Cameron create entirely stable portals that personnel at Montauk could travel through. And just as Einstein predicted in the theory of relativity, the researchers at Montauk discovered that time and space are very much connected. Soon this tunneling technique could be used not only to travel through time, but through space as well. And soon the group was allegedly tunneling all the way to Mars. Rather than spend billions of dollars on NASA rockets, Montauk allegedly developed a method of transporting folks, or teleporting, I guess is the proper word, directly to the Martian surface. Extraordinary excursions to Mars increased in frequency until a set list of goals for the team's activities on Mars had been established. Previous research had supposedly already discovered an ancient abandoned city on Mars, and it was a prime piece of real estate, a giant pyramid that the directors of the project wanted the men on the ground to investigate. The only problem was this pyramid was sealed solid and couldn't be penetrated by any normal means. So it was that the Montauk chair was utilized once again to beam directly into the pyramid itself. Well, it remains unclear what was discovered in the abandoned Martian pyramid. It is alleged that some form of ancient technology was retrieved and beamed back to Earth. Well, these travels through time and space would continue until August 12, 1983. This was the year that, incredibly enough, with Cameron seated in the Montauk chair, they managed to open up a portal to 1943, known to the deck of the USS Eldridge from the original Philadelphia experiment itself. It's at this point that the researchers apparently became alarmed. Remembering the old paradox theory of time travel, they became concerned that Cameron would see himself on the deck of the Eldridge 40 years in the past and create a direct violation of the laws regarding space and time. So they decided they needed to close the portal. The team supposedly had a special phrase to issue Cameron in order to let him know he needed to snap out of his psychic focus. And the pre-selected phrase was, "The time is now." When one of the team members whispered this phrase into Cameron's ear, he attempted to comply, but before he could completely close the portal, something strange happened. Everybody's shock and horror, a 10-foot-tall creature covered from head to toe in dark fur jumped through the portal and began attacking staff members. Like a demon from the nether regions of space and time and unleashed on our point of reference. This creature is ready to go berserk. And originally it did go on a rampage, running over the base, destroying equipment, and attacking anybody that dared get in its way. The team tried to shut off the power, but after several attempts to switch off generators, shut off power grids, even physically cut power cables, the power stayed on. This was later attributed to the fact that power is being unleashed from the exercise itself, and it had created a kind of loop of tremendous energy within the core of the system, powering up the machines indefinitely. Well, with the power refusing to turn off, the team began to aid the unleashed creature in its destruction. They actually joined with the rampaging monster, helping it beat the crap out of all the equipment in Montauk. And to their immense relief, it eventually destroyed enough of it that the generator finally cut off. Well, the Montauk chair was now shut down, and the scary entity it had summoned dissolved back into non-existence. Maybe that's all the monster is trying to do in the first place, destroy the generator so it could return to the ether from which it came. At any rate, the Montauk conspiracy is one of the most mind-bending and bizarre you could ever come across. There's been a lot of written about it. Preston Nichols and Cameron have both written and spoken a great deal about it. Well, for our last conspiracy of today's show, let's talk about John Todd and the conspiracy in the church. It was supposed to be a typical Sunday service at the Open Door Church that evening in 1978. But the guest speaker that night was determined to make sure that the sermon from the pulpit was anything but a routine event. Over 500 churchgoers were gathered at the assembly hosted in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and they were ready to hand over the complete attention to the mystery man who was about to talk to them. Well, little did they know what they were in store for, because right there up on the stage, a charismatic young evangelist named John Todd was getting ready to turn their previous stable, conspiracy-free world upside down. Opened his sermon by stating as much. He said, "Many things I say are strange to Christians." Decidedly odd way to begin a sermon. But the guest preacher went on. He said, "Most of you grew up in Christian homes. Even if you're in the world, you were not very close to what I was into." With this admission, he didn't drop the bizarre bombshell he had come that he had some sort of inside knowledge that witches were regularly meeting in the nation's capital. After the crowd murmured, exchanged strange looks with each other, and shrugged in confusion, Todd revealed the source of his inside knowledge. According to Todd, he was actually the descendant of an early group of settlers, the Collins family, who were known to be involved with witchcraft. In fact, the Collinses were said to have been the ones that brought that practice from Europe to America in the first place. Todd explained he was from this long line of witches and warlocks, and he himself was initiated into the practice at the age of 13. Went on to affirm that a year later was officially inducted into a coven in the state of Ohio. And he seemed to have an in-depth knowledge about the inner workings of this shadowy organization of which he claimed to have been a part. And he challenged the audience by telling them when the service is over, I'll be glad to talk with any Mason present. And I'll compare my initiation to witchcraft, word for word, action for action with yours. According to the speaker, secret societies such as the Freemasons had nearly identical rites of initiation as the classic witchcraft tradition he was involved in. After opening with these odd tidbits of information, he went on to relate how he joined the military at 18 and ended up murdering one of his commanding officers. It was after this incident that he supposedly realized the power of his connections. Because rather than being stood up in front of a firing squad, as would have befallen anybody else, he was paid a visit at random by a congressman, a senator, and 2 generals. And these men discussed with him how he could be pardoned and receive an honorable discharge. And it was here that the conspiracy he was part of only deepened. According to Todd, as soon as he put his discharge into action and went back to Ohio, he was given a few $1,000s in cash and a plane ticket to New York City. Here he allegedly attended a meeting of the ultra-secret conspiracy group, the Illuminati. Learned that the Illuminati, run by the Rothschild family, were the controllers of an entire secret planetary cabal. Lesser secret societies such as the Council of 13, the Council of 33, the Freemasons, and the Council of 500, ranking in descending order from the Illuminati. Remarkably, Todd was also one of the first to claim the Illuminati were also went under the heading the Council on Foreign Relations, which is another secret society that still functions to this day. Todd claimed that after this secret society convention of sorts, he was allowed entry into the second terror secret group called the Council of 13. He was informed of an 8-year plan that begun in 1972 that concluded in 1980 with the takeover of the world. As far as we know, that didn't happen. It is outlandish as it sounds. He went on to describe the Ayn Rand classic Atlas Shrugged as an actual Illuminati blueprint for the takeover. According to Todd, various seeds outlined in this novel from the 1950s would soon happen in real life. The time at which he spoke these dire predictions in the 1970s already a time of great energy shortages, and he seemed to be playing upon these fears. He told the startled crowd that the prices of oil and coal would continue to skyrocket until the whole economic system collapsed. And that was the first stage of the supposed Illuminati takeover set to happen in 1980. The next phrase he maintained to be when Illuminati member Charles Mason, who was currently in prison for murder, began to recruit millions of inmates he had already indoctrinated into a massive army. And this army of ex-convicts would be funded by Congress, which would arm them and then release the armed felons to wage war on the rest of society. According to Todd, coincidentally enough, by this time, 1980, the American public had already have all its guns confiscated by the government under the guise of protecting citizens from crime. Trouncing of the Second Amendment would leave the completely disarmed public completely helpless in the face of a bunch of homicidal maniacs, 1 million strong, armed to the teeth, led by Charles Manson. To make matters even worse, Todd claimed the Illuminati would then take out the power grid, leaving the country in total darkness to be mercilessly brutalized by Manson and his militia of psychopaths. And it'd be then, right in the middle of this carnage, Todd contended that a man presenting himself as a great peacemaker would emerge and gain the people's trust as their protector. Basically, he just person out to be the Antichrist, from the book of Revelation called him the son of Lucifer. Todd then went on to relate how he himself had gotten out of his cadre of plotting secret societies. He claimed it was as simple as watching a movie. According to Todd, he'd just seen the cross and the switchblade, a popular Christian testimony piece, felt immediately moved to leave his old life as a witch behind. Remember leaving the showing of this film in a dazed state before somebody standing outside put a Christian tract in his hand. And at that point, he snapped to spiritual attention, reading this piece of church literature supposedly enough to wake him up and jolt him right out of his old life. Then started to attend church regularly, said he received his salvation as well as an inspiration to come clean and preach to the world the highly unusual circumstances of his conversion and past life. Supposedly for that reason, he was speaking to the Chambersburg church crowd that night. But as he solidly explained to the congregation, he also needed money. He was starting a church retreat for former witches such as himself and needed some money in order to fund it. Not shy at all, he went on to tell everybody there, we need $50,000 in the month and a half since we've been trying to raise the money. My pastor's received $25. His plight moved this particular church, though, and he's able to pick up over 1,000 in donations that night alone. Soon enough, Todd was preaching to some of the biggest churches all up and down the eastern seaboard. He also started to distribute specially recorded tapes of his preaching in which he described his supposedly dire state of the world affairs to whoever was willing to put that cassette in and have a listen, always trying to gain as many believers to his conspiracy theory as he possibly could. And these tapes contained the usual message. They also had some rather startling additions, such as the claim that back in the old days of witchcraft, he had been the Kennedy family's own personal warlock. He claimed in yet another of his rambling monologues he'd seen Senator George McGovern stab a girl to death with his own eyes. Also made the bizarre assertion that rock music, and particularly the rhythm of rock music, was derived from ancient manuscripts, and that every time rock music hits the airwaves, it provokes powerful incantations completely unknown by most. His claims are hard to entertain from the outset, and when he was arrested on sexual assault charges years later, they became absolutely impossible to believe. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk more about some of the world's strangest conspiracy theories. Until then, Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying, oh, by the way, our new website, hudnallfiles.com, went live yesterday. You'll be able to listen to this podcast and see all the books we've come out with. Just go to hudnallfiles.com. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.